Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. In today's video I'm going to try something a little bit different. On my videos I usually do a ranking of my favourite songs of an artist or all of their albums, usually going from whatever number, mostly 15 down to 1. This week I'm turning to an artist I've not done a video on before, and that is the Beautiful South. And this video is actually going to be about their single releases. So they released 33 singles over the amount of time that they were a going concern, from 1989 through to 2005. And I'm not going to rank them from 33 through to 1. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a tier list. So before I do that, I just remind you to like the video by clicking the thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, it makes a big difference. And hit the bell to receive notifications of future content. So let's start to use the tier list system to rank the singles. As you'll see, I've set 6 categories. Category 1 is something that I think these songs would actually sit inside my top 200 of all time. We've then got awesome songs, excellent songs, great songs, adequate songs, and then right at the bottom of the tier is a category that I have called What Were They Thinking? So let's dive in then with the first single that they released, which is Song for Whoever. This reached number 2 in the UK charts, and I think this song is really good. In fact, I think it's going to sit in the excellent tier. The follow-up single, which also reached the top 10, is You Keep It All In. And this is the first time we heard the vocals of Brianna Corrigan. I think it's a better single than its predecessor, even though it wasn't quite as successful. I enjoy it far more, so I placed it in the awesome tier. Their third single from the Welcome to the Beautiful South album was a bit of a commercial flop. And yet, I think it's a better song than both of them. I actually class I'll Sail This Ship Alone as a possible top 200 song for me. I think it's a really strong ballad. Should have done so much better in the charts than it did. We move into now 1990 and the Choke album. Their first number 1 single was released during this period, featuring the vocals of Dave Hemingway and Brianna Corrigan. It's A Little Time. A Little Time is a classic, and it sits for me in the excellent category. I don't think it's top draw Beautiful South, but it's a great single. The second single release from Choke, one would expect to have been a top 10 or 20 follow-up single. That tends to be what happens when someone reaches number 1. They released My Book. And although I don't dislike the song My Book, I can only place it in the What Were They Thinking category down at the bottom. It's a decent song, but a terrible choice of single. The third single from Choke didn't do much better, but really should have, and actually is, for me, comfortably one of their greatest ever songs. It sits in the phenomenal category, and that's Let Love Speak Up Itself. I like the original version from the album, the single version where it's cut short slightly, and then there's a really good version if you actually pick up the Live at the BBC, which is featuring Jackie Abbott singing it on a BBC session, which was actually what went on early copies of Carry On Up the Chart. Let Love Speak Up Itself is fantastic. We move now into the final album from the Brianna Corrigan phase, which is 0898, and they released Old Red Eyes Is Back. I think this is an absolutely great track, and I'm placing it in the awesome category. This should have been a bigger hit than it is, and I think it stands the test of time as a Beautiful South single. Should have been a bigger hit. The follow-up to that was We Are Each Other. Now, I like it, but I don't love it, and We Are Each Other, for me, sits in the great category. The follow-up to that, and the only top 20 single from 0898, is Bell Bottomed Tear. Now, there are times when I think this is an attempt to recreate the magic of A Little Time, and it doesn't succeed. However, it is still a great song, and the 2-part harmony of Hemingway and Corrigan really carries the song, and top 20 was about right. I'm placing it in the great category. And finally, from 0898, and indeed the Brianna Corrigan phase, is 36D. I think this was a wrong-headed choice of single. There are better songs on 0898, and I don't think it was necessarily to release 36D as a single. However, I don't put it in What Are They On. I think this is adequate. So that concludes the Brianna Corrigan era, and we move into comfortably my least favourite phase of the beautiful South Korea, and that is the downer period with Jackie Abbott as a vocalist. Now, Jackie Abbott is a terrific vocalist. The work that she's done with Paul Heaton since as Paul Heaton and Jackie Abbott is top drawer stuff. This was kicked off by the release of Good as Gold, Stupid as Mud from the Meow album, which I think is absolutely fantastic and sits easily in the awesome category. The follow-up single, which reached number 12, is a cover version of Everybody's Talking by Fred Neil, famously recorded by Harry Nilsson and a successful hit for him. I prefer this version to his version. I think Jackie Abbott's vocals really soar on this record, so I am placing their cover version of Everybody's Talking in the excellent category. I don't think it's quite as Good as Gold, but it's a really worthy follow-up. The third and final single from Meow is Prettiest Eyes, and this is a big down step for me. Whilst it's not in the category of What Were They Thinking, like my book is, and I can see why it was a single, I actually quite like it, but I think it's merely adequate in terms of this tier list ranking. So that's where I've placed Prettiest Eyes. We now reach the 14th single of their career, and it's the sole brand new song that was from the Carry On Up the Charts compilation, which sold huge amounts. One Last Love Song. I think this is a really, really fine single. So much so, I'm going to place it in the awesome tier. Following the huge success of Carry On Up the Charts, despite the fact that Paul Heaton was apparently in this very depressive, dark place, we had a question of what they were going to do next. And I'm not including Dream a Little Dream of Me in this list because it was not released as a single in the UK. The next single was actually the standalone Pretenders to the Throne. Odd song. I like it a lot, but not as much as the awesome and top 200 tier, so I am placing Pretenders to the Throne in the excellent category. The reason being, I think the lyrics are particularly clever, and I particularly like the phrase where it says, is it this place, is it that place, and it says, or is it Hull with its musical flair? I think that's a really clever little twist, a typical Heaton-esque twist in his lyrics. We now reach Blue is the Colour, which I find an unlistenable album by and large. The lead-off single is Rotterdam, or Anywhere. Again, a really strong vocal from Jackie Abbott. I like it, but not that much. For me, it sits in the adequate category. Despite the fact that this was a top 10 single, it was returning them to the top 10 after a few years' absence. And it was then followed up by Don't Marry Her. Now, Don't Marry Her is a sweary old song. The single release, I like what they did with the lyrics. It becomes Don't Marry Her, Have Me, and She'll Grab Your Sandra Bullocks. And I think that's such a clever twist in the lyrics. I love the melody, and I think Don't Marry Her is the best thing on Blue is the Colour. I've placed it in the excellent tier. We then reach Blackbird on a Wire. Now, I don't like this song. I find it boring. I find it ultra depressive. It sits easily in the What Were They Thinking category. And its follow-up, Liar's Bar, with that absurdly Tom Waitian style vocal that Paul Heaton does, is, without a shadow of a doubt for me, the 33rd ranked song of all of their singles. I hate Liar's Bar, and it's the only song that I would say I actively dislike. Easily in the What Were They On category. What Were They Thinking? I can't stand it. It's awful. Moving out of the Jackie Abbott depressive phase, moving to the Jackie Abbott upper phase, and the Quench album, and the release of Perfect 10. A great duet with slightly saucy lyrics between Heaton and Abbott, and it reached number 2 in the UK. It was worthy. It's a really, really good single. I have placed Perfect 10 in the awesome category. The follow-up, Dumb, I think was, as its name suggests, a dumb choice of single. This had originally made it onto a B-side from the Blue is the Colour era, so it's a bit of a hangover from that depressive era, and it feels it. Dumb, I don't think, was a great follow-up single. I've placed that in the OK category. I like it enough. I think there were better songs, much better songs, that should have come out sooner from the Quench album. The third single, which reached number 12 and was the last top 20 single that they released, is How Long's a Tear Take to Dry. I think this is really good. The video, which was animated and almost Flintstone-y style drawings of the band, is really good fun to watch as well. I heard them play this live. It's a great song. I've placed it in the great category. And then finally, we reach the last single from the Quench album, and it's The Table. This was not a successful single. However, the single version features the London Community Gospel Choir, and much as I like The Table on Quench, I love the version with the London Community Gospel Choir. It really lifts the song. It puts it, as a result, into that top 200 category right at the top. The Table, one of their best singles, despite its commercial lack of success. We now move on to the final Jackie Abbott album, which was Painting It Red, which I think is too long, too many forgettable songs on it. It was trailed by the single Close to the Most, which is, it's great, it's a good single. I've placed it in the great category. The next single was their only double A side, and that provides a quandary for me because it's Just Checking, which I like, and The River, which I really don't. You smush the two together. Just Checking would have probably made it into great. The River would have been in What Were They Thinking? Put them together and I have to end up putting it into the adequate tier. At this point, Jackie Abbott had left and they had a new greatest hits compilation that was coming out called Solid Bronze, which is typical Heaton tongue-in-cheekness. And the single released from that is Root of All Evil. This would come 32 on my ranked list. I don't hate it, but I don't remember it. I think it's utterly forgettable. I think it's a poor song, poor single. Reflected by that at the time, it was their least highest charting, just missing the top 50. Root of All Evil is in that What Were They Thinking category. So now we reach the final phase of the band, and there is no doubt at this point that they are in serious commercial decline. They recruit Alison Wheeler, so this is the Alison Wheeler phase. The first album released with Alison Wheeler is Gaze, which is my favourite Beautiful South album. I think Gaze is terrific. Her presence, I think, reinvigorates Heaton and Rothery's songwriting. And the first single that's released from it was A Few Things That I Ain't. Now, if you've watched my top 100 videos that I did with my son, you'll know that Just A Few Things That I Ain't is in that top 100, so it can only fit in the top 200 category here. It's my favourite Beautiful South song. The follow-up single, which didn't do particularly well either, is Let Go With The Flow. And I love this song too. I've placed Let Go With The Flow in the awesome tier. We now move into their covers album, which it's called Gold Diggers, Head Nodders and Folk Songs. And they tackle covers in a very different way. For instance, there's a really good version of S Club 7's Don't Stop Moving that they put into a completely different tempo and slow down. Really, it's a fun album, but it's not essential by any stretch. The lead-off single is a cover of ELO's Living Thing. I have to say, I enjoy it. I prefer ELO's version. It's a good cover. It's in the adequate tier. The next single was a cover of a song by the Heppelbaums. Except it wasn't. It was a Heaton and Rotheray original composition and they were playing with us. And it's called This Old Skin. It's actually forgettable. And I've placed it in the what were they thinking category. I don't remember anything about the song whenever I hear it. It does not stay in my brain. It has to go in that tier. The final single was a cover of the Zombies' This Will Be Our Year. And I think this is really good. I didn't know the original song. This could have easily been a Heat and Rotheray original. I like it a lot and I've placed it in the great category. And now we reach the final curtain for Beautiful South. It's the Superby album, or Superby album, however you pronounce it. 2 singles released from this. And the first single is Manchester. And whilst I find it an amusing lyric that they talk about if rain makes Britain great, then Manchester is greater, I don't particularly like the song that much. It's adequate category for me. And finally, their very last single, The Rose of My Cologne. So this is full on pedal steel style country, and I don't think it suits the band. It's a clever song, but in some ways, despite the fact they've not done anything like this before, it feels formulaic country. And that too sits in the adequate category. The fact that both singles fit there is part of the reason why I've never actually owned a copy of Superby. So that concludes my tier list ranking of the 33 Beautiful South singles. It's a bit of a departure to me. I've not done a tier list before. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this and if you'd like to see me do it more often rather than doing my usual rising up ranking versions. Before I go, I'll remind you to like, subscribe and hit the bell. I'll be back in a week with another video, but until then, thanks for watching.